Good evening and welcome to Trailblazers. This is the show that brings you closer to understanding the journey to the successes of some of the country's women and men of excellence. I'm talking about the visionaries, the movers, the shakers, those bold enough to follow their dreams. My guest this evening is Business Leadership South Africa's Chief Operating Officer, Busisiwe Mavuso. A trailblazer in her own right, Busisiwe Mavuso is a shaker in the finance sector with over 20 years experience working for different companies in the various industries ranging from training, consulting, telecommunications and healthcare. She's also served as Managing Director of the Black Management Forum Limited, the investment company, and joins me in studio this evening to tell us a little bit more about what exactly it means to be successful and what it takes to be that bold trailblazer. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Mpo.
You're a trailblazer, a successful woman who's made tremendous strides to become the person you are today. Talk us through your upbringing. What was that like?
You know, my upbringing was very normal, and I say normal because I think a lot of Black African people in this country today have probably had the same upbringing. So I was born and bred in Soweto, matriculated in Lufenza Girls High in Orlando East. That was in 1994, and because of my family background and because of the financial constraints that we had, I couldn't go to university. So I had to find a job, you know, so I started then in the banking industry. So that was 23 years ago in 1995. As an intern, or what today they call learnerships, you know, for 2 years. And I started with my studies then. You know, right in 1996, I registered my undergraduate degree in BCom, measuring in accounting and auditing. I've always wanted to be a chartered accountant. And yeah, 23 years later, Mpo, the rest is history.
And today you have qualified as a chartered accountant after qualifying in 1995, the milestones that you've had to go through to really become who you are today. How does that make you feel?
You know, Mpo, I normally say a lot of us cannot escape the limitations of our generation. Born in a different world, in a different country, to a different family, it would have taken me 7 years to attain the CA qualification, because that's all you need. But given the circumstance now, you see the importance of transformation and inequality in this country. It cannot take you 23 years, you know, to achieve a qualification that would take normally 7 years to complete. Now, if you were to compare me with someone who qualified in 1994, or rather matriculated in 1994, imagine the quality of life. Imagine how much, you know, your background, your circumstances hold you back, you know, by taking you so long, you know, 3 times the amount, you know, that it would take a normal person to do. So the issues, therefore, you know, I normally say inequality in this country is the greatest ticking time bomb. And if unattended, it's what is going to bring this country to its needs. So, but I think your question is, how does it feel? It feels wonderful, you know, to achieve, you know, my childhood dream 24 years later, you know, and I really persevered. I think I was focused on it. I don't think I'll ever go back to being a CFO or a financial director. But for me, it brings to its logical conclusion my 23 years experience in finance. You know, I think I just wanted to finally have the designation, you know, because I can, you know, and bring it to its, you know, final conclusion. Obviously, after my undergraduate degree, I did my postgraduate studies in management. I did my master's in leadership, you know, and now lately I've just gotten my designation. So, yeah.
And it's quite an impressive CV to speak of here. And you mentioned one key word here. You spoke of perseverance.
Absolutely.
And from this, I gather that it takes a certain type of character, though, to persevere against all odds. I mean, you speak about inequality. That cannot be ignored. You speak about transformation. But the qualities of a person of your caliber and rising above these odds. What do you think is the missing link when you look at the youth of today?
Mpo, it's persistence. I think our youth are going to have to understand that the notion of instant gratification does not work. You have to earn the stripes. You have to learn the ropes. You know, there is virtue in having gone through all the ropes and having learned everything that there is to learn, you know, because ultimately no one can ever take that away from you. So I normally wonder and am dismayed when these young kids matriculate and then the next thing they are starting businesses or they are consulting. You know, and I sit and look and I say, but I thought that you consult because you are a subject matter expert. So I don't understand how you consult with 5 years experience. What in-depth experience have you acquired for you to make you a subject matter expert who can offer advice, you know, to whoever on a particular field? So I think it's really the notion of instant gratification. But hey, of course, we live in a digitalized, you know, economy. You know, everything is, you know, now. I'm sitting here now, it's on my Twitter, everyone, you know, and I think probably the pace at which life is moving, the world is moving. You know, some of us who are clearly not of this era, you know, just have difficulty in terms of comprehending and understanding it.
What does success mean to you?
I guess, yeah, that's interesting. We all define it differently, obviously. For me, it means achieving that which I've always wanted to achieve and having the time, the space, the latitude to do what I'd like to do when I'd like to do it. I think ultimately that is what, you know, that freedom, you know, to be able to dictate, you know, what ought to be. You know, what time to wake up, what time to go to bed, what time to... I think for me, that is what success ultimately, you know, would mean to me. So that I'm not bound to any of these systems that we are chasing as human beings. You know, that, of course, we need to chase because, hey, we need to live.
And before you took on your current role, you were also with BMF.
Yes.
And before that, you were already a senior in your field of expertise.
Yes.
But there's a difference. There's perhaps a fine line between a senior and taking on an executive role. Talk us through the requirements here of taking on this professional executive role with the kind of muscle and authority that you would need to, especially given the fact that you're a woman.
Mpo, I think one thing also we need to appreciate so that those that are coming behind us don't look at it as an impossible task is to keep on repeating until people get it, that the skills that you need to perform a job, you learn on the job. So when I started at the BMF, I was not an executive. I was probably maybe a senior manager. I was a financial manager. You know, and interestingly enough, Mzwane Lemanyi was the president of the BMF. You know, I got in there 3 weeks into the job. The managing director of the BMF left, you know, and I had to act as MD. You need to have an environment that wants you to succeed. You need to be surrounded by people who are absolutely obsessed about your success and development. And that is precisely what I found, you know, in the BMF. So Mzwane Lemanyi, for instance, Mncane Mthunzi, Bonang Mohale, you know, those are the people that have actually taken the time, the trouble, the care to actually handhold me and make sure that they actually walk with me every step of the way. So I did not come into this an executive. You know, I learned the ropes by observing, you know, by being on the job, you know, by being given encouragement, coaching and direction, you know, by these people that I've named, you know, and I think that is the beauty of organizations like the BMF, you know, to say that there is so much empowerment, you know, that comes from having been in organizations like that. Precisely, I think, from what the organization represents, what it seeks to achieve, it's amazing how it bestows the black pride, you know, and the need for us to continue as black professionals to advance the agenda that we need to advance so that this country, cannot continue. We cannot keep on talking about inequality, unemployment, and poverty, when there is 80% black people in this country. So the BMF, for instance, is an organization, is an organization that is advocating for such. And not only do we advocate for it, we live it, in our values. We are absolutely obsessed about the development of black professionals because we know that for us to be able to achieve what we need to achieve and finally win the economic war, we can only win it if there is a critical mass of black people that are ready to actually take on these positions and lead the economy, as it were.
You mentioned economy. The latest unemployment stats were released and unveiled. And at the same time, President Cyril Ramaphosa has spoken to these figures, showing some concern here. If you look at the target and goals and objectives that the president has been speaking of. I mean, he spoke about the $100 billion target over a period of 5 years. Yeah. Given his acknowledgement on really admitting that the economy really is not in good shape, how much confidence does that inspire for ordinary South Africans on the ground?
So the unemployment figures in this country ought to worry all of us. It ought to keep us awake at night as leaders in business and government alike. 55% youth unemployment is alarming. I think the figures that were shared are probably 37.2 unemployment, and those are the extended definition of unemployment. That is 10 million people, that are unemployed. And I don't know if it includes those people that have given up in terms of, looking for work. And I would argue that those numbers in the South African context are the formal numbers. When you look at the informal numbers, I would argue that that number is bigger than that. It cannot be, so it therefore says that we really need to be panicking about the state of the South African economy. So we need foreign direct investment. We need the cash injections. But more than that, there is a certain level of thinking and engagement that we're actually going to have to embark upon as business and as government alike to say that what is going to get us out of this dark hole as a country is not what we have always done. So there needs to be a different level of thinking, different level of engaging with these things, whilst we are saying we need expansionary fiscal and monetary policies to stimulate economic growth. I don't think that it is the same stimulus packages that we have always, because I don't think we have been where we were at as a country. So I think our ability and agility to can actually act, with precision in terms of, dealing with this issue is going to be critical. So it makes the investment drive that much more critical because we need that cash injection from outside to can actually stimulate our economy. Because I think from where we're sitting, South Africa cannot do this on its own. So this is a true acknowledgement that we need all the help we can get, because you look at most of the industries, look at what's happening, for instance, in the construction industry. Basil Reed, is undergoing business rescue. Look at what's happening in Group 5. Look at what's happening, all of the construction industry is a shadow of its former self. The mining industry alike, what we used to produce, as a mining industry, we're producing a fraction of it, today. So what therefore needs to be done? What is it that we're going to have to do to ensure that? So it really needs a different and new kind of thinking, in terms of what is going to be the solution that is going to take South Africa out of this mess that it's in.
And the president has always mentioned business. And we know that Business Leadership South Africa represents over 70 businesses in the country. How does that then translate to the actual businesses that are operating? How does the message of this unfortunate situation that the country is going through at the moment translate to actual businesses?
Absolutely. So there is a lot of dependence at the moment on business to steer this economy in the direction that it needs to go. And I think rightfully so. I think business has been really left to its own devices for far too long. I think business has not done as much as it can and as much as it could have in the past. So I think it's about time that business really stands up, and put their money where their mouths are, as it were. So for instance, from a Business Leadership South Africa perspective, after our repositioning last year, we said our first strategic pillar is inclusive economic growth and transformation. And I think that was precipitated by the acknowledgement that we understand that although we have had economic growth touching 6 to 7% in the Thabo Mbeki era in this country, it was not inclusive. So to what extent, therefore, from a business perspective, do we ensure that what we achieve and what we drive is inclusive economic growth? And we were very deliberate about transformation. We didn't have to say inclusive economic growth and transformation, because transformation is inherent in inclusive economic growth. But I think we wanted to be deliberate about transformation because we know that transformation continues to be dismal, in business. When you look at the ownership patterns, when you look at the management control patterns, the Commission of Employment Equity report came out on the 28th of June 2018, 14.3% of top management in the private sector is Black African. In a country where 80% of the citizens are Black. It cannot be. And 70% of top management is white when the population is only 10% white. It therefore says there is something that we're doing wrong as business in terms of addressing the issues of inclusivity and transformation. There are these deliberate artificial glass ceilings that exist for our Black professionals within corporate South Africa, and we need to confront that. So the strategic pillar of inclusive economic growth is probably an acknowledgement from ourselves that for us to achieve inclusivity, transformation is a condition precedent. So what we do, therefore, from here as Business Leadership South Africa and the 86 companies that we represent is then going to have to be very telling. But one thing for sure, Mpo, we cannot do what we have always done. There's going to have to be a serious seismic shift in terms of the focus, in terms of how we drive things. For this economy to be inclusive, I think we all agree that the majority of the citizens of this country need to be included in the economic mainstream. The structure of this economy, which is sort of like a triangle or a pyramid, which has got a few people on top, which are very opulent, living in wealth that is, I don't even know what to call it. Barack Obama, when he was saying, why do you need so much money? I mean, how much food can you eat and how big a house can you live in? So that is the small fraction of this economy. And then you've got a small middle class, and then you've got this bulging, people that are living in abject poverty. Now, we would have succeeded as Business Leadership South Africa if we can take this huge bottom part of people living in abject poverty into the middle class, because we know that that is the structure that is going to sustain the South African economy. We know that economies that thrive are those that have got a bulging middle class, because middle class is what sustains economies, not the rich. We are the spenders, we are the, buyers, we are the ones that, so to what extent, therefore, from a business perspective, do we make it our business that the majority of the citizens of this country that are living below the poverty line, are actually included in the middle class? I was actually surprised and shocked, actually, to learn that the reason why we advocated for the national minimum wage, it's because 42% of South Africans earning an income are earning below 3,500. It cannot be. 42%. That is 6 million people. So those stats are shocking. So you therefore say it makes sense why the Gini coefficient in this country is 0.7. So we are moving very quickly towards perfect inequality. The wealth Gini coefficient in this country is 0.95, which is almost perfect inequality. So the wealth of this country is concentrated in the majority of the citizens of this country. Now, already, that structure, Mpho, has to tell you that something is fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
No wonder why our economy is sitting the way it's sitting. So what is it, therefore, that we're going to do to change this? You know, the formula that only 17 million people earn enough to can pay taxes and 17 million people are dependent on some form of social grant. This formula should be the other way around. Yeah. You can't have 7 million. So these are all the things from an inclusive economic growth and transformation perspective and strategic pillar as business leadership South Africa we ought to be grappling with to say, how do we change this around? How do we ensure that we build a prosperous society? Because business can only prosper in a prosperous society. You know, we are also not going to achieve what we need to achieve from a business perspective, you know, if the society within which we operate, you know, is what it is. Absolutely.
And I mean, you mentioned quite rightfully so, it cannot continue to be business as normal.
Absolutely.
How does it speak to the societal norms, the attitude adjustments that seriously need some acceleration?
So, societal norms such as?
The societal norms that need to be accelerated. At the moment now, I mean, if you look at a lower LSM 1 to 4,
yes.
Perhaps,
yes.
and you get in tune
yes.
with that LSM
yes.
that is grappled and
yes.
stuck in
yes.
poverty,
yes.
which continues
yes.
to be a normal
yes.
situation because you cannot move and see beyond that.
Yes.
That's a kind of attitude that needs some sort of adjustment there.
You know, but when you look at these people as well, these people are living hand to mouth. You know, South Africa, for instance, if we were to change, you know, the societal norms, we need to be a saving society. We are not. But if you've got so many people that are earning less than 3,500 per month, what is there to save? So where do you even begin to start having the saving discussion? If we're sitting with a country where I think we need to probably look at this and say, what is it that we could have done better, you know, from a politics perspective?
Yeah.
Because I believe that we should not have left some of the structural issues and systemic issues the way they are. The special planning issues, for instance, the education issues, the healthcare issues. So these are all the things that are going to ensure that the status quo in this country is perpetuated. If we say, as this government today, that it's okay for my and your black kids to pass matric with 30%, what are we saying?
Yeah.
We are saying we are happy to bring people into business or into the world of work that do not know 70% of the stuff. It cannot be. And if you look at it and you say, but South Africa is a global and open economy. So we are not just competing with each other, we're competing with the rest of the world. But look at what Japan, Chinese and whatever do. Their kids at grade 3, grade 4, grade 5 are already learning programming and coding.
Yes.
And our kids are leaving matric with 30% of the... So, you know, these are some of the systemic changes that we're going to have to make. You know, the fact that a lot of people continue to spend 60% of their income on transport to go to work. We should have dealt with those special planning issues. Why do people need to continue to live 40 kilometers away from work and have to spend 60% of their income on transport? So those are the things that make it difficult for some of the social norms to remain as they are, because people are just not making it. They are living from day, and they are really a paycheck away from poverty. You know, and those are the realities that we need to confront and say, what is it that we're going to do differently as this government, as this business, as this leadership in this country to change things?
The president made some statements on land and provided some level of certainty and to a certain degree another level of uncertainty. Yeah. But in a nutshell, he's really passionate here about this land issue, speaking and translating to economic growth.
Yes.
How much of realism is there to this land issue? It's burning. It really is a burning issue.
Absolutely. So I think the issue about the land issue so far has been its uncertainty. But look, what the president announced last night was merely the ANC's position of what needs to happen, in as far as whether we amending Section 25 of the Constitution or not. And they're coming out and they're saying, we think we need to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. So that is just a submission that they're making to the Parliamentary Committee. A lot of submissions have been made by all South Africans from all corners of South Africa. So I think until we have the final view of the subcommittee of Parliament that is working on this issue to say, how are we going to proceed on this? I think it's going to provide some kind of certainty. Now, for us to be able to achieve economic growth and for us to be able to achieve investment, I think investors and business alike would like to know what is it that we're working with. It might not be something that they like, but they just need certainty. So I think the fact that this thing has been hanging and it's in limbo, is not good for investment, neither is it good for business. Yeah. So I think we need some certainty and clarity in terms of, so where South Africa standing in the, land issue with amending Section 25, and what does that translate to? What does it mean? So that even if those foreign direct investors that want to come into the country, they've got a clear view of the policy environment that they are coming into so that they can then make the decision based on the, policy environment. So I think it's the limbo that is more damaging to our economic growth, than the iteration of the president or than whatever, way we go with this, policy, as it were.
Unfortunately, this is where I have to leave it.
Thank you.
But before I say goodbye to you, what in your mind, looking back at the milestones and the strides that you've made to become this trailblazer, what are some of the words, parting words of wisdom that you would leave to our viewers who are watching this and really just marking these pointers of the elements and the components of a trailblazer?
Yeah. But I would say, success is not about how bright you are, how dynamic you are, how, which side of the fence you come from, which surname you bear, and so forth and so forth. Success is really about persistence. And if it's about persistence, then it's within your control. And if it's within your control, then everyone can achieve it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Success. The road to success isn't easy, but trailblazers like Busisiwe Mavuso continue to rise above the odds. That's all we have time for today. From me, Mposa Tole, it's goodbye.